Complete breakdown when she didn't get the promotion she wanted instead of handling it professionally. She quit on the spot. Burning bridges faster than a wildfire. I can't believe they picked Brianna over me. Katie had sobbed into my shoulder that day. Do you know how long I've worked there? How hard I've tried? I remember sitting in my new apartment, the one I was so proud to rent after graduating. Listening to her rant, I thought she'd calm down in a few weeks, maybe even find a better job. That's not what happened. 7 months passed while she processed everything. Then another 7 months of only applying to certain jobs. That's how my parents explained her unemployment. Meanwhile, I was the one making sure my parents' bills got paid. Their fridge had food, and Katie could keep seeing her therapist 4 times a week. The therapy is really helping her, Mom would say. As I transferred another chunk of my paycheck to their account, she's making progress from where I stood. Saw was more money leaving my bank account. I saw my sisters sitting around at our childhood home, scrolling through job listings with crazy requirements like jobs that had 5-day weekends and unlimited vacation time. Meanwhile, I was working overtime at my marketing job, taking on extra clients, and barely having time to breathe this past year has been exhausting for all of us. I could see the stress on my parents too. Mom's face had more worry lines, and Dad's shoulders slumped lower every time Katie turned down another job for not being good enough. Looking at my tired parents, I knew we all needed something good to look forward to. That's when I started planning a trip to Rome. Just for the 3 of us, I spent weeks organizing everything down to the smallest detail. The perfect hotel private tours and experiences just for them. A cheese tasting tour for Mom. She had always dreamed of trying real Italian cheese. A vineyard and wine tour for Dad. He loved a good glass of red. I thought this trip would be perfect, a way for us to forget the stress and create happy memories. I imagined us walking along the Trast, sharing wine at cozy cafes, and finally seeing my parents smile again without worry on their faces. But life can change in a second. One moment I was driving to meet a client thinking about my presentation and our trip the next day. The next, there was a loud crash, the screech of metal, then nothing. I don't remember much about the accident, just bits and pieces, sirens, paramedics talking, bright lights overhead. When I fully woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My whole body ached like one giant bruise. The doctor said I needed emergency surgery, but it had gone well. Still, I wouldn't be leaving anytime soon. You're very lucky, a nurse told me as she adjusted my fore. The airbag saved you from the worst of it, but that other car hit you hard. I was still groggy when my parents and Katie walked into the room. Mom was holding her favorite travel purse, the one she bought just for the Rome trip. Seeing it made my stomach drop. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice scratchy from the breathing tube. We'll have to postpone the trip. Don't worry, I'll cancel everything today, and we can go when I'm better. I expected them to be understanding, maybe even a little disappointed, but still supportive. But what happened next I wasn't ready for. Instead of comfort, my mom spoke in an oddly calm voice. Oh, there's no need to cancel anything, honey. I blinked, sure that the painkillers were making me hear things wrong. What your dad and I have been talking, she said, adjusting her purse strap. We think we should still go. You can rest here, and we'll take Katie with us instead. Her words hit me harder than the car that crashed into me. I stared at them, waiting for someone to say. It was a joke. Katie's been through a lot this year, Mom added, patting my sister's shoulder. She really needs this break too. Katie stepped forward. You are supposed to watch the house while we were gone, she said. Since you can't, you'll need to hire someone. Make sure they're reliable. I lay there, my mouth open, unable to speak. This couldn't be real. My own family was standing there talking about their vacation while I was lying in a hospital bed less than a day after major surgery. Then they actually waved and walked out, leaving me alone with the steady beep of the heart monitor and the painful realization that they had just abandoned me for a trip I had planned and paid for. I lay in bed for what felt like hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. The pain meds couldn't dull the ache in my chest, the one that had nothing to do with my injuries. They didn't even ask how I was feeling, I whispered to myself. Not about the surgery, not about the accident, not about anything. A nurse passed by. For the third time, probably noticing my heart rate going up on the monitor. She stopped in the doorway, concern on her face. Everything. "Okay, honey, your numbers are a bit high, my phone," I said, suddenly remembering. "Could you please get my phone? It should be with my things." A few minutes later, she returned with a plastic hospital bag. My hands shook slightly as I pulled out my phone, relieved to see it wasn't damaged. The screen lit up with my old background, a Christmas picture of me and my parents. I quickly changed it to the default wallpaper. "At least something survived the crash," I muttered. Then I opened my email app. There it was, my Rome trip folder full of all the confirmations and plans I had worked so hard on. I stared at it for a moment. "Well," I said to myself, my fingers hovering over the first email, "if they want to treat me like a travel agent instead of a daughter, I'll act like one, and one by one." I started canceling everything. One by one first. The hotel, a few clicks, and the beautiful suite with a view of the Municipio 9 was gone next. All the private tours, Mom's cheese tour canceled, Dad's wine tour. Gone the private guide for the Pry, the evening cruise on the Trast, the Skip, the Line Municipio. 9 passes, I canceled them all with each cancellation. I felt a mix of emotions, sadness, yes, because I had dreamed of enjoying these experiences with my parents, but also something else. Not exactly satisfaction, but maybe justice. They treated my accident as an inconvenience. They chose to take Katie, who hadn't worked or contributed to anything in a year, on a trip that I paid for while I lay in a hospital bed. The last thing left to cancel was their return flight. I stared at the confirmation for a long moment before clicking the button. A small petty part of me wondered how they'd react when they realized they had to figure out their own way home. Once everything was canceled, I put my phone on silent, placed it face down on the bedside table, and closed my eyes. They'd figure it out soon enough, maybe somewhere over the Atlantic. They'd realize that actions have consequences even in families, maybe when they landed in Rome with no hotel, no tours, and no flight home. They'd finally understand what it feels like to be abandoned and left to figure things out alone. The first message came at 3:25 a.m. They must have just arrived in Rome and gone to check into the hotel. My phone lit up on the table, buzzing silently, despite the pain in my ribs. I smiled a little by breakfast. I had 15. Missed calls by lunch, 40. The messages started piling up too. I kept a little tally on the back of my hospital meal menu. Just for fun, missed calls, Mom. 25. Dad 18 KY. 48. Text messages. 50 and counting voicemails. 21. I smirked. Let's see what's so urgent that they blow up a hospital patient phone when the count passed 51. I finally picked up my phone wing as I moved. Katie's messages were first. "How could you be so cruel and selfish? We're standing in the hotel lobby with nowhere to go. You're absolutely heartless." Then Mom, Isabella. "I am so disappointed in you. This isn't how we treat family. We've never done anything like this to each other before. I don't understand why you're doing this to us, your parents." I stared at the screen, shaking my head. Now they wanted to talk about family. I couldn't help but laugh, even though it hurt my stitches. "We never done anything like this to each other before, really. What about leaving your injured daughter in the hospital to go on a vacation she paid for?" Dad's messages were shorter but just as demanding. "Call now, fix this immediately, your mother is crying." The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. New messages popped up, faster than I could read them. "The hotel won't let us check in." "Where are tour reservations?" "What do you mean? You can all the return." "Flights, answer your phone right now." I was reading a particularly nasty message from Katie about how I had ruined everything when Dr. Olivier walked in looking serious. "Miss Wilson, your phone has been ringing nonstop for hours. This is a hospital, not a call center. We need a quiet environment for all our patients." I felt my face heat up with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, doctor. It's just before I knew it. I was explaining everything, the accident, the Rome trip I had planned, how my family reacted, and how I canceled everything." He listened carefully, his expression growing more and more concerned. Then my phone rang again. My mom's name flashed on the screen without hesitation. Dr. Olivier picked it up. "Hello, this is Dr. Olivier from Memorial Hospital. I need to ask you to stop calling your daughter needs rest and is about to have a second surgery. Even from across the room, I could hear Mom's sharp voice through the speaker. I don't care about any operation. Put my daughter on the phone right now. She needs to fix what she did to us. Dr. Olivia's face shifted, first shock, then disbelief, then anger. Without another word, he hung up. I'll be keeping this until after your surgery, he said firmly, slipping my phone into his pocket. You need to focus on healing, not dealing with this for the next few days. Everything was a blur of pain meds and sleep. Without my phone, I had no idea what was happening with my family in Rome. But honestly, the silence was healing in its own way. But life has a funny way of surprising you. Knock knock on my 4th day after surgery. Karine from marketing peeked into my room. We brought contraband, she whispered with a grin. She and Nick from accounting sneaked in real coffee from the cafe down the street. The next day, Brittany and James from my team showed up with magazines and office gossip. The day after that, my cousin Mary, who I hadn't seen in months, came by with homemade soup. We've got a schedule worked out, Brittany said, holding up a color-coded spreadsheet on her tablet. Someone from the office will stop by every day. We can't have our best project manager getting lonely for the first time in a long time. I felt cared for. I felt tears fill my eyes. You guys didn't have to do this. Oh, please, James waved off my protest. After all the times you've helped us out, this is nothing, even my boss. Mr. Ryan had called the hospital himself. Isabella, don't worry about a thing, he said in his usual gruff voice, though it sounded softer than usual. The accident happened during work hours, so our insurance covers you. You'll get a good payout. It should help with your recovery and more on my 5th day without my phone. Dr. Olivier returned and placed it on my bedside table. I think you're strong enough to handle this now, he said. But I'd understand if you wanted to leave it off a little longer. I picked it up with shaking hands. Over 125 missed calls, countless texts, dozens of voicemails. I started reading from the beginning, watching how their messages changed over time. The first ones were pleading, Isabella. You have to understand our side. We're family, we can work this out. Then came the guilt trips. How could you embarrass us like this? We don't deserve this treatment. And finally the anger, you won't believe the dump we're staying in. Katie wrote, there are bed bugs. Dad's sleeping on a cot. We hear gunshots at night. Mom's messages were just as dramatic. We can barely afford food. We're eating from street vendors like homeless people. We haven't gone on a single tour or seen anything properly. Is this what you wanted to make your parents suffer? The latest message was a demand for return tickets home, followed by multiple threats about what would happen if I didn't fix things immediately. I ID'd and placed the phone face down on the table just as another knock came at my door. It was Sophie from HR holding a deck of cards and a bag of cookies she had smuggled in. Ready to learn poker? She asked with a grin. I looked at her, then at my phone, and I made a choice. I turned my phone off completely and smiled. Deal me in. I was actually having a good day when they burst in. My physical therapist had just finished our session, and I felt proud of myself. I had managed to walk a few steps on my own. Then I heard it, the sound of rolling suitcases on the hospital floor. My only warning, seconds later, they stormed into my room like a hurricane. How dare you, Mom's face was red with fury, still in her travel clothes. How dare you do this to us? Right behind her, Katie dragged her designer suitcase. Eyes blazing, the suitcase Katie was dragging, I had bought it for her last Christmas. Dad stood in the doorway looking both angry and embarrassed. Nurse Kate, who had been adjusting my fork, quickly stepped between them and my bed. Lower your voices. This is a hospital, not a circus tent. But they didn't listen. 3 weeks of frustration exploded out of Katie like a burst dam. She's Finn here. Katie threw her hands up, motioning around my private hospital room. Look at her lying in a clean bed, getting 3 meals a day while we suffered. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the painkillers giving me courage. Or maybe I had finally had enough. Suffered, my voice was quiet but sharp. Let's talk about suffering, shall we? The room fell silent for the past year. I have worked myself to exhaustion, paying the bills, buying groceries, covering Katie's therapy sessions while she sat at home turning down perfectly good jobs because they weren't perfect enough. Mom opened her mouth to speak. I raised my hand. Not this time, I planned this trip as a gift. I spent months organizing everything. I paid for it all with my own money. Then I got into a serious accident, needed emergency surgery. And what did you do? Did you ask how I was feeling? Did you care if I was okay? No, you took Katie, the person who hasn't contributed a single penny to this family in over a year, on my vacation. While I lay in a hospital bed, I could see the first flickers of shame on Mom's face, but it didn't last long. You can afford to go to Rome anytime, she snapped. This might have been our only chance then. Katie, my own sister, delivered the final blow. Besides, you might have been left disabled after the accident. Then you definitely would have canceled everything. That's why I convinced Mom and Dad we should go while everything was still paid for. The room went dead silent. Even Mom looked shocked. My fingers trembled as I reached for the call button. The speaker crackled. Security, please. I need 4 people escorted out of my room, and I want them added to the restricted visitors list. Isabella, don't you dare, Mom started. But it was too late. 3 secure security guards stepped into the room. This patient is recovering from major surgery. One of them said firmly, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I watched as they were led away. Mom's angry voice echoed down the hall. Dad's silence said everything. Kati's protests faded as they disappeared from sight the next day. I did something I should have done months ago. I blocked their numbers, all of them. My finger hovered over Dad's contact for a moment longer than the others. But in the end, his silence had been just as painful as their actions. Then I opened my banking apps. I canceled all the automatic payments I had set up for my family. No more monthly transfers. For Katie's therapy, no more paying their utility bills. No more grocery money. I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. 3 weeks later, I was discharged from the hospital when I finally got home. My apartment felt like a sanctuary. My work friends had cleaned it, stocked the fridge, and even put fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. No family drama, no guilt trips, no financial demands, just peace and quiet. I focused on getting better. I did my physical therapy exercises. I started working remotely slowly. Life fell into a rhythm. One that didn't revolve around fixing my family's problems then. About a month after I left the hospital, my phone buzzed with messages from cousins and family friends. Mom had taken her complaints to Facebook. My own daughter has abandoned us in our time of need, she wrote after everything we've done for her. She has turned her back on her poor struggling parents. Katie can't find work. Bills are piling up and Isabella won't even return our calls. Some of her friends who didn't know the truth jumped in to comfort her. How terrible after raising such an ungrateful child. Family should always come first. I'll pray for your daughter to come back to you. I was about to close the app when a new comment popped up. It was from my cousin Mary, Aunt Linda. Are you seriously playing the victim? You left Isabella alone in the hospital after her car accident to go on a vacation she paid for. You took Katie instead of supporting your injured daughter. We all know what really happened then. More relatives started commenting. They shared details how I had supported my parents for a year while Katie refused to work. How I had planned the Rome trip as a gift. How they visited me in the hospital while my own parents were off touring Europe. 3 days later, the post disappeared, but by then, screenshots were already spreading in the family group chat. Mom's plan to make herself the victim had backfired completely. 4 months after the accident, I walked into my office without my cane. For the first time, my steps were steady, my head was held high. All the physical therapy had paid off. I was finally back to normal, maybe even stronger than before. I expected a quiet first day back, maybe some small talk by the coffee machine. Instead, I walked in to find my entire team gathered around my desk. A massive cake sat in the middle of the celebration. Welcome back, Isabella, they all cheered. I walked in and the cake took my breath away. 3 beautiful tiers of vanilla and chocolate decorated with fondant flowers. On top, a tiny figurine of a woman, standing tall, my eyes filled with tears. You guys, I started but I couldn't finish. Karine pulled me into a gentle hug while Nick started cutting the cake. "Oh, and this came for you," Brittany said, handing me an envelope. It was from the insurance company. I opened it right there, surrounded by my work family, and nearly dropped it when I saw the settlement amount. There were more zeros than I had expected that night. Sitting in my apartment with a piece of leftover cake, I opened my laptop and started browsing travel sites, the same luxury hotel in Rome I had booked before. Popped up in my search results without hesitation, I checked availability for 4 months from now. Single room this time, I murmured to myself, smiling as I clicked book. Now next I booked the tours, the same ones I had planned before, but this time designed for a solo traveler, the cheese tour, the wine tasting, the private pride guide. I booked them all this time. Every experience would be exactly what I wanted, no compromises. My phone buzzed, another attempt for my family. A text from Mom, "We miss you." A voicemail from Dad, an email from Katie earlier that week. They had even sent expensive flowers to my apartment. I had thrown them straight into the dumpster. The last message was from an unknown number, "Isabella. It's Mom. Please talk to us. We're still family." I deleted it without responding, turning back to my laptop. I saw the confirmation emails rolling in hotel tours. Flights, but this time seeing them didn't fill me with stress or worry. I wasn't planning for anyone else. I wasn't managing anyone's expectations. I felt nothing but excitement moving my lap. Tea aside, I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. 3 more months and I'd be walking the streets of Rome, eating at cafes, visiting museums, making memories. My own memories on my own terms. My phone buzzed again, another call from an unknown number, undoubtedly another family member. I didn't even look at it instead. I closed my laptop and smiled. I opened my photo gallery and deleted the old family pictures I had been holding on to. It was time for new photos, new memories, new adventures. Sometimes the family you choose, friends, co-workers, and kind strangers, who become more than strangers, matters more than the family you're born into. I had learned that the hard way. But standing there planning my solo trip, I knew one thing for sure: I would never forget it.